Ladies, gentlemen, and cyborgs, I think that one's taken. Welcome back to the Casual Coders Podcast. With me are Kyle and Alex. Would you two please introduce yourselves?
Hello, my name is Kyle. I'm an electrical and computer engineer, likes to work on fun programming projects as well as play lots of video games and do lots of other odds and ends things that, of course, I'm sure get to at some point.
And I'm Alex, and this is my first time on the real set here, so this is very exciting for me. I am bringing my casual coding expertise or lack thereof, so we can play with that.
Absolutely.
And of course, I'll be your host. I'm Ian.
Ian, tell me your background.
My background? Studying computer engineering and making it work.
There you go. That's all we're doing out there.
It's the best you can hope for.
Yeah.
It's really hard when you graduate university. It's like, oh gosh, what has actually changed? Like
absolutely nothing.
When you're in university, it's like, I got to get my piece of paper, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right. I got to get my piece of paper.
You have a goal. You have tunnel vision.
And then you get that goal, and then now it's like, okay, I need a job. What do I know how to do?
What do I know how to do?
Oh gosh, what do I know how to do?
And then you
absolutely
learn what you don't
nothing.
know.
Let's be real
Yeah.
here. University doesn't teach you shit.
Yeah, and then already all your knowledge as soon as you graduate, it's like, well, that was what was the case when I graduated, and that's maybe not even relevant anymore. So
Probably not. No, let's be real. Technology moves so fast nowadays anyway. You learn something first year of university, and boom, it's worthless by the last year of it. Especially
if it was worth
you're in a
anything to
5-year
begin
program.
with.
Yeah, that is a good question.
A lot of
right?
the
Is
classes-
Scratch worth it? No.
yeah, well, I guess it's useful to learn maybe.
Is it though? I don't know. I mean, I learned that in middle school. Like, am I really going to use that in a professional programming job? Of course
I mean, well,
not.
No.
But
Maybe
I mean,
if I want to be a teacher,
We need
a
a Scratch engineer. Yeah.
but when some things like, and or like general logic gates,
Yeah.
like that stuff.
Also learned it in high school.
Okay, but that is not normal to learn in high
You
school.
are
that's true.
correct.
I
I
never
did
did.
attend a
Yeah.
vocational school. Yes, indeed.
So, yep. That, but also the fact that you actually tend to learn more. Like if you go on like a co-op or an internship,
Yes.
that's where you feel like you
Absolutely.
learn everything. Because there are classes that haven't been changed probably for like 15 years.
I think
Yeah.
Chandler was talking about
Yeah.
that at one point. Yeah, where one of his classes was using like 15-year-old software, and they're like, hey, "Can we use more modern software?" And they're like, "No, you got to learn it with the 15-year-old stuff."
Yeah, it doesn't run on Windows 10. That's the problem.
Yeah, right.
You
Here's
gotta
your
get the,
Windows XP virtual machine. Go
Yeah,
nuts.
of course.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Oh, man. It's so
The
frustrating.
struggles.
It's hard because some of it, it's like, it feels like it's because the professor doesn't want to change the course structure.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah.
And they're being just lazy when
Yeah.
it really should be their job. But on the other hand, some of it is like, yeah, this is useful information. For
And
example,
some of it is like
stuff.
core standards and stuff, which you can't change.
That
and
is
like
true.
the state
Right.
mandates or whatever, and it's just so useless.
It's
Unless,
tough to
of
stay
course,
up
you
to
work
date.
in the government, in which case,
Yeah.
you're still running Windows 2000 or something. I'm sure there's plenty of machines out there.
Security by obscurity. Nobody
Yeah,
can
right,
hack
exactly.
it because
No
they
one
can't get
can-
software to
knows.
compile.
Yeah, right.
Oh my
Little
God.
script kiddies are gonna have a really
Right.
tough time with Windows 2000.
There
yeah.
you go. Good luck getting that on a floppy or whatever.
Yeah, right. Little kid has to find the save icon, but in real life. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
They 3D printed the same.
Yeah, the 3D printed save icon.
Yeah, exactly.
Unbelievable.
That's a good meme.
That is a good meme.
Well, what do you want to get kicking off talking about here today? We've got, I'm sure, a host of topics we can start off whenever we're ready to get into it.
Yeah. I have one.
Let's hear
Absolutely,
it.
go for it. Yeah.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New
Yeah,
Year.
this one's coming out the week after New Year's.
Yep.
Because the other podcast came out December 3rd. I don't know. Whenever. It shows up
Some time
eventually.
ago.
I don't know time.
Yes.
So my question is, do any of you have New Year's resolutions? And if so, what are they?
You know, I've got a probably decent-ish one, and that is to at least try to improve my self-confidence, right? I'm not the most confident person in general, not the most confident person on camera. And so if I can at least improve that, I figure it'll be good for me in, everyday life. And,
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a great goal. Like self-improvement in general is always like a thing to strive for.
Sure.
Absolutely.
It's so hard though, because
Absolutely.
sometimes if you expect too much of yourself too quickly, then you end up quitting.
Right. Then
Yeah.
you put yourself into a downward spiral in a rut.
Yeah, that's
It's
how a lot of
bad,
people
right?
start strong, and
Yeah.
then it's hard to keep
I've
going.
seen, I don't recall, doesn't matter. One of common advice for New Year's resolutions, if you're setting any yourselves, is to set a small goal. Something
Yes.
that's really small, really minor, like a small change that you can do over a period of time.
Yeah.
Something that's easy to be consistent about, because it's not a huge change that impacts behavior. it's a small continual change that impacts behavior. You have to do something for a long number of months, like 2 or 3 months, before it becomes routine behavior.
habit.
Right, you form a habit.
Like you need to form that habit by starting small. And then once you have the small habit, you can work up a little bit larger and a little larger and a little larger. But it takes time.
Absolutely. And then another thing that I've heard people say is instead of saying, I'm going to do this, say like, this is the year of self-improvement or something like that. Like, give yourself like a genre. You know, because then whenever you come across something where it's like
of self-improvement,
sure,
or like, you know, I'm going to be more fit this year. This is the year of getting fit. So then whenever by doing that, whenever you come across a choice, you go, oh, well, it's the year of getting fit. And then it'll like urge you to make better and better decisions in like every aspect instead of that, as opposed to I'm going to go to the gym every single day, work out an hour a day. And then like on day 3, you're like,
that's definitely an unsustainable goal.
You definitely have to be realistic. That's a good idea, just to kind of set something that is definitely measurable. I know the SMART goals, we've heard that ad infinitum. Everyone
what is the SMART goal?
SMART goals, but it's kind of true. I know we had to set goals at work, and that's one of the things I even think about every year is like, well, what's like one tiny little thing that I can at least measure by the end of the year and say, even if I didn't make every change I wanted to make, I can say I made a measurable change or a measurable
write better
impact in my
Python
life.
scripts.
Yeah, maybe you can't. I don't know. You know,
it's hard though, because what does SMART stand for again? SMART goal.
So SMART, of course, is going to be
actually
specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, realistic, and then the T they always give up. I think they just say timely. So the idea, of course, is that you want to set a specific goal. You don't want to say I want to get better at like reading
scripts
or something. You'd want to say like maybe I want to read 4 books. Maybe that's a simple goal, but it's measurable. You can count how many books you read in a year. So it's measurable, it's achievable.
And it's by the end of the year.
It's only 4, right? So, I mean, you could think, what's something I can achieve?
God, that's a wild thought, by the way.
Realistic is something that you really want to focus on, too, because I wouldn't want to set a goal and say, I want to learn how to, speak Mandarin and then go to China. That's really hard to even achieve with a university education, let alone something you wanted to do on your own. So you wouldn't want to pick something like very lofty, like I'm going to, save up all this money and learn all this stuff. You want to say, okay, maybe let's take off a bite-sized piece of my vision that I can achieve in a year and then go for it. And then timely, of course, is something, well, let's see, can I do this in a year? Can I make 12 individual goals for each month and keep on track? So that's something at least I've found is if I have a checkbox I can tick every month that says I'm on track, it really helps me stay focused.
Yeah, I want to jump back to that example real fast, actually, that you said of reading 4 books in a year.
Yes.
When was the last time any of you read an actual book?
Oh, you're going to embarrass me.
I'm embarrassed
I love
myself.
Reading.
I have not read an actual book in ages. I don't know if it's been like 5 years or longer, but like an actual book in my hands, I have not read. I couldn't tell you.
I
like,
can't
legitimately,
even think.
I have no idea.
That wasn't a textbook.
Do audiobooks count?
8, it could be 10.
What'd you say?
Do audiobooks count?
Negative, no.
Negative. Why negative?
I was saying like an actual paper, like hard copy book, like an actual book.
So I haven't.
You sat down and read, like flipping pages and everything.
I couldn't even tell you what the last one was. Oh, you know what? No, that's not true. I did read a book. I think I read 2 books last year, and that's the most I've read in 5 years. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
And they were pretty bite-sized. They were manageable for me. But
So I actually started a book in paper form, and then halfway through I switched to the audiobook
so he
version.
gets half credit for that.
He gets half credit, yeah.
And
partial
that
credit, yeah.
That book is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F***CK. The way that the
Interesting.
You could figure out how to say
I mean, that sounds like a pretty
that's the little name of the
thing,
book.
to be totally honest with you. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Could you give us a chunk of what that book was about, maybe for the readers?
It's kind of like a version of like a self-help book, but in a way more like down-to-earth manner, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's more of like a, hey, the self-guru is just like, feel better about yourself. But in reality, like, it's about like, long story short, basically what it's saying is that it's, okay, so basically it's saying don't care, but what it's saying is you should pick and choose what it is that you care about.
Right.
Is long story short of what it's saying.
Pick your battles. I like that.
Yeah.
Got it.
If you, trying to care about everything, there are things that really aren't worth caring about. So you should just pick a few things that you really care about, make sure you do those things, and then you're going to be happier over in general.
I used to be like that in middle school, actually. I tried to make sure that every single person liked me, and that is just unsustainable.
Right, yeah.
It caused
It's
problems.
impossible.
It was impossible. It's not
Sure.
good. Yeah.
And even if it is possible, then you're kind of pulling yourself in so many different directions.
right, you're
that,
spreading
like,
yourself too thin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The strain that would cause for you is
A lot.
not manageable for
Middle
most
school
people.
wasn't a great time for me, I guess.
Well, what, was it great
I
for
mean,
that many people?
better than most people, I'll be honest.
okay.
Better than a lot of people,
Sure.
but not the greatest.
middle school is just so hard because so many middle schoolers, you lack like apathy and or like caring or understanding other people also have emotions at that point. So people are
Yeah.
just so mean to each other.
And it's
Oh,
the
yeah.
general thought that kids are
vicious.
assholes.
Yep,
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
vicious. They're
Yep.
monsters. But, they're honest.
Hey,
so.
there's a reason I hate kids.
Sorry if there's any kid viewers out there.
Yeah.
We love you.
Yeah,
we
all
love
6
just
of our
you.
children who view us.
Yeah, thank you.
exactly.
Thank you. Yeah.
So New Year's resolutions then? I heard one.
Ooh, that, yeah. Yes.
I haven't put enough thought into this, and I know the clock is really ticking. But I
Yeah,
think
you got how many
that-
hours?
I mean,
6?
not everyone does New Year's resolutions, I'd say.
I
But
don't
That's
really
fair.
do it.
I don't think I set one
per
last
se.
year.
I think my best thing to do is like a New Year's vision, less of like a plan of like a list of things I want to do, and more of like when they ask you in an interview like where do you see yourself in 1 year,
Yeah.
or 5 years or 10 years. I like to think of just like what would I like to be doing next December. I mean, where do I want to be? Maybe I want to be in a house. Maybe I want to have a yard, whatever. All these things that like are realistic goals for me at this point. I'm sort of at that point where I'm trying to branch out and find my own plot of dirt on this here beautiful earth. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking is just like having my own space and pursuing whatever all the challenges of being a homeowner come with. So that's something I'm like
So you think
thinking
you're going to buy a
about,
house
but
this year?
I am on my way. So I
way.
bought a pile of dirt, and I'm going to try to, I know Chandler already mentioned this, I'm going to compile my own home from source. So I'm going to try to at least have something built. It's just something, I mean, it's not huge. I don't have a huge budget. I'm just right out of school. But it was something I was really looking for. I like cooking and drinking a lot. So I wanted a nice kitchen, and that's not something that's easy to find in a market where houses that are in, let's just say, a questionable state of repair are going in minutes.
Yeah, what, buying like a fixer-upper or something?
Yeah, so I didn't want to do that just because just how quick everything sells in the market right now is a really tough time to try to buy something that I wasn't even sure about and then have to pour so much money and time into it to make it what I wanted. So yeah, I was going to try to build something here. I still got lots of waiting time. The pile of dirt is dirty and plain. So yeah.
But you can make it like exactly to spec, right? Like that's one thing
Yes.
about compiling your own stuff from source is you can make it
Yes.
exactly how customizable you want it.
I know
right?
exactly
Make it
what I
as
want.
slim
That's
as
nice.
possible for just your own home, right?
Yes. So I've got plans, but that's it. I don't have anything in the dirt yet. They might dig a hole sometime soon.
Do you
Also,
think
I
you'll have
just
it done by the end of the
noticed-
year?
It's just been delayed more and more. I first talked to a representative in February of 2021, and right now they have not excavated the basement yet. So that's where I'm at. I
I see.
purchased the land. I signed the contract at the end of April, and only was allowed to even step on it in September. I know. So
Interesting.
it's a very
interesting.
slow moving process, and it's out in the boonies. That's the other thing, of course, if you wanted any land, which I did. I
Yeah.
wanted a nice pile of dirt to play around in, my empire of dirt. Yes. So in general, I know I asked a lot of people about this. It's a long process, but it's something that I have the patience for, and I have the, I guess I have the time. That's what it ultimately boils down to. So yeah, I'm just going to see how this goes. This is going to be really fun for me. Nobody in my house has built nobody in my family rather has built a house since the 70s. So
I don't really even know the process. I assume you have to like hire an architect and do.
Yes. So basically, all the hard part is out of the way. I have a mortgage. I'm just paying interest on it because they haven't drafted barely anything. The only thing that's happened so far is clearing, which is surprisingly expensive, but everything's surprisingly expensive. But yeah, there's a pile of dirt that's got a patch of dirt with some stakes in it, and the surveyor, put those stakes in. I was surprised that they finished in about 20 minutes. So I think they make about $1,000 an hour. Yeah. So it's interesting to see how cheap or not some of these things are. But in general, yeah, that's kind of what I was going for. Is just right now it seems like a pretty good value, given. I know I'm not one to talk about home building or mortgages or anything financial, but I just seemed, from all the research I did and from the people I talked to, it seemed like a good value now to just try to make a modern modern home out in the boonies, and then maybe plan to be there for about 10, 20, or 30 years. So we'll just see how it goes.
You can make sure that it has like the fiber.
Yeah,
Right,
you know what?
right?
I'm not sure if that's available in the area. It is definitely rural. So one of my struggles I've found is that even like a gas utility is not possible.
One thing I've learned from Chandler is if you do live out in the boonies, run your own fiber drop out to the front of the street or whatever.
Okay.
Otherwise, they're gonna charge you like $10,000 to run from the street to your house, depending on how long your driveway is, right?
Yeah.
So run your own drop because it's gonna be cheaper to do it yourself, especially if you have your own tools and everything, and you're already like digging up an area for your driveway or whatever.
I definitely believe you. I would agree there. I'm certain there is no chance I'd had fiber on the other end of my house to the rest of the street and the rest of the area. It is definitely rural, but maybe someday I will run my own. I'll be happy to. But yeah, it's just, it'll be a new challenge.
Well, run it while you can is the problem.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, that's another thing they were telling me. I know, I can't remember what we were talking about geothermal for, but I did actually specifically have a conversation with one of the builder, like the contractor guys, and he was saying that if you're going to do geothermal, do it before anything's there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really convenient. But I think he said it was about $30,000 for the system. If you don't have anything to dig up, if it's already, you just got a hole in the ground. But yeah, it's so interesting to hear about that because the standards in 2021 are a hell of a lot different than they were in the 50s and 60s. I'll tell you that. So it made me feel a lot more comfortable. I was actually just over at my sister's house this week rewiring her 80-year-old house. And that's pretty new, I guess, for some of the houses I've been in. And it is a nightmare finding out what's behind the walls sometimes. So I'm glad to know it'll at least be up to code.
What are you going to find? Old razors, nails, something rusty.
Asbestos.
Worse than that. Yeah. It's like, is this insulation or dust?
Not to say. It could be either.
It's cancer.
Yeah. Well,
right.
You're right there.
Congratulations. You receive asbestos.
We've uncovered a lot of treasures. So
I'm sure.
I'm not having fun with that. I'm glad to be done for 1 week anyway.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. So in general, New Year's resolution, get situated in a new place. Get comfy in a new home. That's what I'm hoping for.
That seems like a reasonable enough one to me.
Right. It's vague enough where it's hard to screw up, but it's something that I'm going to be aligning all of my goals for the rest of the year. I feel like most of what I'm going to be doing is going to be centered around that, kind of building my wealth, both investment wise, and building. Look,
we got an r/Wall Street bets guy
absolutely
right here.
I'm not holding any lines.
Off GME or something? I see how it is.
Some GameStop.
Yeah, right.
I just, after I lived with roommates for 3 or 4 years out of school, I had a lot of fun. I saved a lot of money. I'll tell you what, because it's dirt cheap when you share a house with people.
You're not wrong.
But you're not building any wealth when you put the money into rent. And that's one of the things I started to realize. I took a step back and realized, well, you're not saving any money.
Yeah, well, with today's economy, I don't know, with the housing market being where it is.
And that's exactly the challenge I've been facing.
All right, well, we're coming back to the podcast with Rob here, so let's try to move on with the topic.
Let's just circle back.
Circle back somewhere that we haven't already discussed.
Which was,
I don't know, man.
New topic. So here's the thing I've been wondering.
That was New Year's resolutions, I guess.
You never talked about your New Year's resolution.
That is true. That's true.
See, I got to throw it back
come on,
to
you thought you could get out of that.
Man,
I was about to sneak away.
Without talking, all right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess my New Year's resolution is probably to try to be more healthy in general, just because I'm about to hit a quarter of a century.
I'm pretty sure you're more healthy than I am already, man.
That is true, but I'm also a little bit older than you, and my body is, I'm sure, just raring to fall apart after you get older.
Younger.
Yeah, right. After 25 whole years, your body is just already about to fall apart.
Yeah, all the crazy collagenous, your body's like, I held it together. Yeah. That's all you get. I'm sorry.
That's all you get, man.
Right.
It explodes.
Hey, man, it's okay. I don't give us past 2050 to live anyway.
Well, you're optimistic.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Optimistic.
Yeah. So tinfoil hat time, how will the world end then? Nuclear war? Question mark?
I don't know. It's going to be
AI extinction, gray goo.
Some war over probably water, let's be real.
Yeah, that's true.
Climate change going to flood a bunch of cities.
Florida will be underwater.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We're
Florida,
good here.
Norway,
we're high enough elevation, I think, kind of in the middle of the U.S. I think we won't be flooding anytime soon.
Well, who knows, right? 2011 shows.
Asteroid?
Oh, geez.
Maybe seems sort of unlikely, but
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Pandemic.
a lot of time.
Yeah,
We're already in the middle of that.
Yeah, we've been there, done that.
Check.
Right, exactly.
Check that one off the list.
Deadly virus. Okay, we've been through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, and it's really hard though, because like if I ask myself, where do I want to be in 5 years? That is an extremely difficult question for me to answer.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a job. Cool. Yep.
It's so hard though, because it like changes depending on the day you ask me. Like one day I'll be like, you know what? I'm just gonna get super into social media. I'll just be like, an influencer. And then another day,
like right now.
Yeah, like right now. Yeah, exactly. Hello, future self.
Right.
Another day I might be like, you know what? I'm just gonna go like work for Apple or Google or Netflix or Facebook or / Meta, I guess now.
You're gonna watch this in another like 2 years and be like, God, why was I such an idiot?
What was I thinking?
What was I thinking? Yeah, exactly.
And other times I'm like, oh man, I have quite a few like really cool ideas for startups. Let's like become a startup, become a CTO and or CEO and get that rolling. It's like,
be like Chandler and join as many startups as
Yes,
you possibly
collecting
can
as
while
many
you're
as
young.
possible.
Yeah, right. You got to collect them all.
That's
collect them
right.
all.
They're like Pokemon.
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah.
got it. I see.
But it's really hard because like you can kind of dabble in all of them, but I feel like if you do that, you won't do any of them really well. But if you like were to choose one and go hard at it, you could like really succeed.
Right.
Possibly, or you fail miserably. But I guess that's the risk you take, huh?
Sure.
I guess
It is a risk,
But it feels like as long as you choose to do something, you go at it hard with enough effort, while at the same time being iterative in your process and improving yourself. I've pretty much seen an 100% success rate if you follow that like structure there. Anyone who doesn't quote unquote succeed either has kind of unrealistic expectations, like I want to be a trillionaire, which is like physically impossible.
Like Tim Apple.
Yeah, but Tim Apple himself is not a trillionaire.
It's just the company.
The company's a
Yeah, I
trillionaire.
know.
company.
That was funny.
But that's the point, I guess.
Yeah,
what I'm trying to say is like,
I mean,
no one
maybe
is
it's not
actually-
realistic. Yeah.
Yeah. Or they missed one of the following, which is like they didn't put in enough physical work. What they actually did is they spent maybe 10 hours a week doing something, and maybe in order to do something really well, they did need to go hard to do it.
Right.
Or let's say there are some people out there who are working 100 hours a week.
Absolutely.
It's their life thing. And
that's got to be a really difficult thing to do, though. That's so many hours per week.
Yeah.
There are so many people who have to do that just to survive.
Very true.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who do that 100 hours. I'm going to generalize here. And anytime you generalize, it's dangerous, right?
Sure.
And it's not fit to everyone. But in general, I've seen people who work super duper hard. Maybe they own a company or whatever. But part of it is that they don't take into account a self-improvement section. So they just do what they know how to do over and over and over again, expecting like different results and or more results from them doing it more. When I think a really important part of the process is like self-improvement. What am I doing that can be improved? And then doing that as part of the 100 hours in order to amplify yourself. Because over time you will realign, and like the faster you can iterate and make new goals, the more likely you are to be on target. Whereas I feel like they set a vector and are just going where that vector where they want to be might be like, way out of left field, but they've never turned left. Instead they're going straight and are like, man, I'm not there yet.
Right.
There's that. But then there are other people who in general are in like bad situations where let's say they have a whole family that depends on them and they have to work 100 hours a week in order to just make ends meet, and they don't have time to be able to invest in, for example, learning a new skill in order to do something, because they just physically don't have the time to do that. But if you do have the time to do that, it is definitely a way to, better yourself, maybe.
Yeah. I feel like it'd be really easy to burn out, though. That's one of the toughest things, is when you have that kind of responsibility. I mean, having the weight of the world on your shoulders and then being expected to meet all these expectations, even of your own making.
Yeah.
Oh, that's tough. So
expectations are hard. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why you want to set realistic expectations.
There you go. Cycle it back.
We're definitely speaking from a point in our lives, I guess, where the expectations of us are at an all-time low. When you're in your 20s,
That's
like
great. Yeah,
it's totally
exactly.
expected for
Are
you
they
not to
at an
know how life
all-time-
works.
I'm going to counter that, though. Are they at an all-time high? You're expected to graduate college and get a good job and
But
move
you
out of
already
your parents'
graduated, or
house.
at least
There's a
at this
whole
point, right?
bunch of stuff that you're expected to do.
It depends. So certain parents, I guess, would definitely have that expectations on their children.
It definitely depends on your upbringing.
But
certainly.
in general, for the United States, I guess, when you're looking at 20-year-olds, people are like, you're just 20, you're just kids messing around, don't know what you're doing. You're at your friend's dorm room, drinking till 4 a.m. every day is like the stereotype.
Woo, party.
Definitely not me.
So anyone who's doing better than that is like excelling in life.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
yeah.
So I guess just
I guess as you get older, you're expected to have a family to support, be supporting kids, all that stuff, which takes a lot of time, money, and effort.
Absolutely. Like if you're 21 and living with your parents, that's kind of okay, even still in today's society.
Absolutely, yeah.
But if you're 41 and living with your parents,
that's a problem, right?
Is, significantly different.
Or viewed as a problem. Maybe it isn't a problem, but it's at least viewed as a problem.
Exactly.
Yes.
I totally agree. There are totally cases, in my opinion, where it makes a lot of sense to be able to move in with your parents. If, for example, you are in a tight spot, you need to save money and or reconfigure your life in a certain lifestyle, and you have a good relationship with your parents, and your parents have a good relationship with you, and you have a way where it'll work. There's a spot for you in their home.
Sure.
For example, where you could physically live there.
Right. Yeah.
It would make sense.
A lot of people have to take care of their parents as both the people get older and of course their parents get older. So that's a valid, reason for it. But yeah, a lot of people might view that in like a negative light just because there's so many like preconceived notions that people have, like, oh, well, you were supposed to sow your own seeds and make your own way in your 20s or 30s. And now they think, well, you've squandered all of your, middle life here. Because you haven't gone and done what you were supposed to do, like what society wants. So yeah, it's an interesting question that people can ask themselves, like, what am I supposed to be doing at this point in time? And yeah, you might think you have that freedom in your 20s to think like, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to be in 10 or 20 years? So yeah, it's an interesting question to ponder.
Yeah, because I'm just afraid of making the wrong choice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, isn't everybody?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What they say hypothetically is you should just make a choice and then in the future. In the future, if you want, then change. It's okay to change.
Sure.
Hypothetically.
Absolutely.
But
change is only natural, yeah.
But it's super hard, right? Because me and you just gave opposing opinions / advice, right? You say stick to it, and I said it's okay to change.
Well, stick to it, be committed to what you choose, but understand that you're allowed to realize and you look back and say, maybe this wasn't what was best for me at the time, and be able to admit, this was maybe not a mistake, but a learning experience, an opportunity for growth.
Or even realize that halfway in and realize that this isn't something that you wish to pursue.
Sure.
It certainly happens.
Yeah.
College degree, for example.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, this isn't really something that I'm interested in. Maybe I should reevaluate my life and look for a different degree.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different paths you can travel. So, the only thing you can do is pick one and go down it. And then
and hope that it's the right one, yeah.
And if you don't like it, change it. There's always that opportunity. You're never stuck.
True. Speaking of lifestyle topics, one thing that I find difficult is when pursuing what you want to do in life, whenever you're, for example, like playing video games or watching movies or doing anything that's seen as downtime.
Sure.
I find myself like feeling guilty that I'm not like pursuing something. Like I'm not like,
absolutely, yeah.
Working towards, furthering my career
I should
or
be studying, right?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
seems like a you problem. Yeah.
Well, I gotta say,
maybe that's really bad wording. That seems like something that would.
Anyway,
I'm listening.
I heard a really interesting take on this from Hank Green. I'll be happy to butcher the quote from him, but one of the things he said is that it's hard to struggle with that feeling unproductive when you're, say, you had a long day at work, or maybe it's your weekend and you just don't want to do anything and you want to just relax. But feeling unproductive can make your relaxation time worse because you feel like you're
stressful. You feel like you're not doing anything.
Well,
or
I should
anywhere.
be doing something.
Yeah.
But one way he sort of justified that, and it honestly opened my eyes up a little bit to the necessity of relaxation, is that maybe an important way to look at it is manufacturing your own joy is being productive. You are producing your own joy by having time to relax and do your own activities, do your own hobbies, or maybe do nothing at all if that's what you need to just clear your mind for a day or for an afternoon or an evening.
Yeah, the whole clearing your mind thing is definitely really useful.
Right.
And then you're starting fresh. And
you don't want to think of that as downtime.
A new project.
Right. You need the downtime.
You need the downtime to be able to consistently work at a project or something, right? You need to be able to process what happened and then come back and say, and reevaluate it from a different point of view, a different perspective.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, that's definitely something I I took that away, not necessarily as just, well, you should be able to, relax as much as you want and not feel guilty for it, but maybe a better way of looking at it is just like, well, maybe I need some time to empty my mind and stop thinking about work or stop thinking about what I need to do in order to be more refreshed and prepared to take on the challenge tomorrow. So that's something I took away from that, and I think it helped a lot with dealing with that guilt, with relaxing and not getting anything done in the day.
Yeah, that's fair. One thing that's hard though is if you take that to its logical extreme, I should just try to maximize my joy then, no matter
philosophical now, are you?
Yeah, I guess, no matter what means possible, sure. Whether it's like getting high on a ton of drugs, if it increases my joy.
Well, I love how you went there.
Yeah. You got to have a sustainable lifestyle, and I'm sure you can look at any extreme and realize it's not sustainable. Yeah, there's
extremes
definitely
do paint good pictures, as we learned in a previous episode.
They certainly do. Maybe as an extreme, painting a picture of what not to do. But yeah, you have to kind of realize that balance in life of like, well, obviously you need some amount of time to relax in order to do your work, but you need to be able to do your work.
I guess that's my question.
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yes, I would argue absolutely. I think that entertainment is
the question is, do you need downtime in order to be able to be functional?
Absolutely. Yes. 100%.
I would argue. I would bet my life on it. I'm saying that at least in my experience, and of course I won't speak for everyone's. And
downtime here, I mean, as spending time to find enjoyment in something unrelated to what you need to do in order to live. For example, eating doesn't count, sleeping doesn't count.
Yeah, that's not downtime.
Okay,
bathing doesn't count.
You wake up
outside of that.
You eat breakfast.
Right.
You either take a shower or you start working.
Mm-hmm.
You work until lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
You eat lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Work until dinner time. You eat dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Work until bedtime.
Mm-hmm. I hate it.
You go to bed. Mm-hmm. Wake up. Mm-hmm. Do the same thing again.
Yep.
For 40 years.
Yes.
And you're going to say that's not sustainable.
I'm saying
you're going to say that is sustainable.
I'm saying that can be sustainable. Yeah.
No,
I'm sure it could be, but
maybe for the right type of person. But
if we're talking in extremes.
Yeah, there are definitely. I see that as being highly unlikely. I see that being very, I guess, toxic. Maybe, I don't know. Like you're literally devoting your life to one thing and one thing only, with no time to really process it. Like the only time to process it would be when you sleep, and even then,
but you're also like. Let's say you're working, right?
Sure.
In general, working doesn't mean you're only doing one thing. Like, let's say your work is split into multiple different parts, right? There's a problem-solving part, there's a application part, there's a brainstorming part, whatever.
Right, but we're saying there's no downtime here at all.
No, I agree. But what I'm saying is by going through each of those, let's say that there's like 5 of those different phases. Anytime you're doing one of those phases, you're still processing in the background all the other phases.
You could probably learn to adapt, but I don't know. That still seems... I don't know, non-sustainable, not healthy. Like just
how is it not healthy? I guess is my question.
I would ask, maybe I'd look at it a different way and ask the question of like, when you think about things like art or music or even just like good old fashioned television, those are not productive. Basically, they're not useful in a work sense of things. You're not watching television for work. Nobody's listening to music for work. And if you are, you're an edge case where you're a music critic. Okay, we're not talking about that. Let's say in a case where you're trying to, get a task done. Those things aren't something that would necessarily be considered work. That's something you might want to do just to relax or to enjoy things like, art. Would you consider that to be potentially useful?
Yeah, I guess I was about to basically go there, which is like, I guess technically you could say that's yourself being useful because what you're doing is maybe you're observing what it's like to be human in certain social situations. So you're learning how, to behave in a friend group or in, so there's still knowledge that you get from
it kind of, it's like social education, right?
Yeah, in a sense, in a weird way.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I would argue that that's necessary for the human experience. I mean, I know there are some people out there who are like, well, I don't really listen to music. And even then, a lot of people would think that's pretty crazy. But to say that you don't have a need, like an inherent need for the arts, seems completely impossible to me.
It sounds like to me that work is completely separate from joy in your mind.
Well, I certainly don't mean that. If I didn't enjoy what I did, I wouldn't be doing it.
Absolutely.
And of course, that's not to say that there's not a mentally taxing aspect to work. Of course, it's work. Nobody wants to work. I would.
That's my
say.
point, though. Some people do like to work and or want to work.
Let's put it
work
like
is.
this.
It depends on your definition of work, I guess. Is work
okay
making money for something? Is work doing like some people define work as doing something and making money from it.
Right.
And other people define it as doing something you don't want to do.
Okay. Well, that's entirely fair. And you know what? I think that if you consider two different, like if you think of like office jobs, which are very different from things like food service industry, both in like the average age of people that work in them and in the actual
Average
amount of
salary.
work that's required, whether it's physical versus mental,
And salary,
et cetera.
too.
And absolutely the
Gotta keep
difference
that,
between
it's a factor.
what I want to get at here is that most people in the like food service industry would probably agree with me that they don't want to do what they do, but maybe they enjoy it. But I mean, if you could wake up and say, I'll get a paycheck if I do nothing today, or I'll get a paycheck if I go wait tables for 40 hours this week, either way, I'll get paid. Who would want to go wait tables? I mean, I can enjoy it. I worked in the restaurant industry at least for like 3 years, and I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it.
The thing is, though, is it feels like the ideal option is actually neither of those. The ideal option is to hypothetically wake up, no matter what, get a paycheck, and be allowed to go and wait tables for like 30 minutes if you want to, just to try it out and have fun and talk with people and then and do another thing.
Fun for the first 30 minutes and then you hate it. Is that,
yeah,
right.
That's basically what I'm saying.
I can see that,
I would say.
Yeah.
So then you have a restaurant where you pay all your people, they show up for 30 minutes,
Yeah.
wait one table.
Somebody else is going to help you. I want to go home.
Order, they bring it to the chef who shows up for 3 minutes to cook one meal for himself. And then
I'll do one, but that's it for today.
The restaurant just empties out like as soon as it's open.
No, we just have AI do all the other work.
Yeah, you have AI do all the other work.
Do you want to go there? So what about this?
We were
What
that
about
advanced
AI
as a
doing work?
species. Yeah, right, exactly. So then we have to ask the AI if it enjoys doing work.
Well,
wait.
That's an interesting question. Do you think if you asked a computer if it enjoyed doing work, what it would say? I mean,
that is
do
a
we
really good
separate
question,
emotion
actually.
and technology completely, or do you think that there's even a potential overlap in those two
I
categories?
mean, that's hard. We got to get access to GPT-3 to see, right?
Right. But is that just a
Have a
thoughtless
conversation with
robot
it.
pushing together sentences that are grammatically correct, or is it something that could even maybe mimic feeling?
Consciousness.
Yes.
Hard to
consciousness.
say.
Now, that's the
We've
question.
literally become armchair philosophers.
That's the question.
Look at
Hey.
us. We're literally armchair philosophers.
Well,
So, I mean, if we're going that, maybe
I've
we
not
can
heard that term
shift
before.
topics ever so slightly, and we can bring up the memories debate, right?
What
was
does
your
memory
early-
do?
What
the
was your
memories.
earliest memory? It must be in the first person. I don't know if I have to say this, but at least it falls true for me. And how do you know that it's real?
I don't think you can.
My first
That's the point.
We'll get to that later. Let's hear about your first memory.
My first memory is really weird because by definition, it doesn't feel like it could be real because it's, let me just tell you what my first memory is, I guess. It's about before I was born, which is ridiculous.
Okay.
It was me waking up on a boat, in the middle of an ocean and in this ocean, everything is more aesthetic and pastel-like. And I floated on this ocean for I don't know, a very long time. And during this, I came across this house that had a door on it. And I opened up the door. I got off of my boat, closed the door behind me and walked in, and it was this house. I'd never seen it before. And walking around, and I was like, whoa, this is super crazy. This is a house. And I turn around and I try to go back to my boat, 'cause that's what I know. And I can't. The door is locked. And then I, go into my house, and that is I see, everyone there. I see my dad, my mother. They had a cat at that point. And growing up, I lived in this mobile home. And it's super strange because there's a front door of the mobile home, but then there's this weird side door that was bolted shut on it. And that was my first memory, basically becoming conscious. From there,
That's terrifying.
my consciousness, when I think about it, starts there. It started in this hallucination almost, became real, and then from there on, it's been continuous ever since, which is super strange. I know that's wild.
that is
Sorry.
insane.
I'm at a loss. I have
Right,
no
right.
clue.
I mean,
I
wow.
started this discussion and I have no clue how to even react to that.
I never would
because
have
it
even
sounds like some crazy
dreamt of that.
acid trip.
It
or,
does.
I mean, that's the thing is you're so young, right? That your brain physically doesn't work in cause and effect ways up until a certain point.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like my first memory is me opening a door at preschool, looking outside, seeing snow, and being like, hey, man, there's snow here.
Okay.
My memory is terrible. My memory is horrible, right? Like, I don't remember the majority of my life. I don't remember probably 99% of my life. Just,
Well, I mean,
I
how
would say
much
it's pretty
of it is
normal,
memorable?
though.
If
Like,
you eat breakfast 10,000
I
times,
barely
you know
remember
which one's memorable.
I'm pretty sure I barely remember anything from middle school. Barely remember
wow.
anything from high school. I mean, I
all
barely
right.
remember anything
We've
from
got
my
two
first year
extremes
in
right
college.
here. I remember becoming conscious, and I don't remember yesterday.
One of my catchphrases that I still get like made fun of is, why would I remember XYZ? I can barely remember my own name. Like, why would I remember what I had for breakfast yesterday when I can barely remember my own name?
That's hilarious.
I get teased for it, but I think it's hilarious because sometimes it's totally true.
embrace it.
Just, I have no clue what I had for breakfast yesterday.
Nobody's
that's
ever
an
going to
easy
get
one, 'cause
mad
I
if
don't
you
eat
forget
breakfast.
their name.
I don't remember names.
Yeah,
When
what's
I
your
used
name?
Yeah, right. When I used to teach swim lessons, good story, we can break off for this. I didn't learn the kids' names until the last day of swim lessons when I had to learn their names to make them report cards. Otherwise, it was just, hey, you, or yeah, you. All right, you're going to do this.
Man.
And it was
I got to say,
embarrassing to say it. I don't know, maybe. But yeah, no,
everyone's
terrible
mind
with
works
names.
differently.
And they rotated relatively quick, too, anyway. It was only a handful of weeks for
Sure.
a swim lesson thing.
That's
so
why-
it always changes. And I'd remember if they were like, if the same kid was still in the same lesson, remember their face after
You remember
learning
the
it
quirky
from
one,
the-
right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
You always remember one of them.
Remember their face after learning it from, doing the report card, obviously. But yeah.
Yeah, I always give teachers mad credit that I cannot believe some of the classes I've been in, I didn't remember everyone in the class.
Yeah, like 30 plus
And
students.
they've got
somehow
everyone's
they have
name.
everyone's name.
They'll ask
down.
them questions about their personal life. I mean, if you're a teacher, you must be great with working with kids because I feel like I could never remember that kind of stuff. I can't remember names at all.
Remembering names, I feel like is its own skill.
It really is. I mean, it's kind of one of those like intrinsic like human traits. You just are baked into your mind. You remember like you see a face and you know it's different, but being able to put a name to the face is always a challenging task for a lot of people, me included. But I think a lot of people say that. I think in general it's just hard to do, because you how many people do you see a day? A lot,
A lot.
probably. Yeah.
Well, that depends on if you work from home or anything like
Well,
that. But
yeah, but even
in
then,
general, a lot.
How many times you go to the grocery store? How many people do you think you've encountered? It's
A lot.
100 maybe. I don't know. It's crazy to think about.
But
Yeah.
you don't really interact with many of the people at the grocery
Right,
store.
and that's-
you
I guess
see
that's
them
part
as
of it.
in passing or whatever,
Sure.
but it's not like you're interacting with them or
Yeah.
really like learning about them.
Mm-hmm.
They're just they're an
NPCs.
extra in the movie, right? Exactly. They
NPCs,
have
I guess
no
in
real.
some sense, yeah.
Anyone who you don't know is an NPC.
That's an interesting perspective.
You
to
heard it
think
here
about.
first.
You heard it here first.
Circling back to the
folks.
original thought about memories, I don't
Yeah,
know
you should
that
be
I
like the
have-
middle one, right?
You would think. I mean, we've already presented the extremes. I don't really have. Maybe this is a middle of the road. I don't have any vivid memories from like very early on. I have a lot of scattered memories that I've at least been able to confirm with my parents and be like, hey, I kind of remember this. Did this happen? They'll be like, oh yeah, this is how the rest of it happened. But it's so true that a lot of the memories, especially early on, really are just like manufactured in the head, and they are confirmation bias of like, well, I remember this is what happened because my parents told me this or my older siblings told me this.
That's where
and
I was taking
choose
this
to remember
discussion.
that. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like I know that many of my memories are fabricated.
Yeah,
because
I know mine are. Yeah,
a lot of my like a good number of memories from my younger years are in the third person from third person photographs,
Right.
and I've taken that and converted it to a memory subconsciously,
And it's like a cue.
real to me.
Exactly.
But obviously it's not real because it's in the third person.
Well, so yours isn't a question
obviously-
of whether or not it happened, but whether or not you remember it happened.
Right,
It's
exactly.
like, right,
yeah,
where you
right.
were.
I don't. I know it happened, obviously, but I don't remember it well. And if I do, it's in the third person because there's a photograph or I've been told about it.
It's so
It's
crazy.
such an interesting thing because obviously, then those memories. They're technically real to an extent.
Right,
They
yeah.
actually happened.
Embellished
but it's
rather than
not a real
manufactured
memory.
entirely.
It never happened. I was not there. It's not something I physically like saw.
Yeah.
I experienced it maybe, but then the memory itself is in the third person. So it's really hard to put that sort of thing into words and explain, but
Right.
Yeah, I also especially have that problem with fabricated memories and dreams. You know?
Yes. How do you
Sounds
tell
like
the
it.
difference? Well, and interesting, and it's actually very interesting you brought that up because one fun thought experiment I had in philosophy class, and I'll stand by it. As somebody who is very down to earth and meticulous in my engineering work, I loved philosophy in college, and it was one of my favorite classes. We had one of the arguments in class of like, can you prove that you're awake? Can you prove you're not dreaming right now? And you can't. And so far, nobody has been able to definitively prove that. But you brought that up, that it's so easy to manufacture your own memories to the point where you don't even know if they're true or not. You remember a dream and it happened, but it didn't really happen. Or you think you're awake right now, but you could just be dreaming that. Like that's one of those things that it's like, it's so hard to trust the mind. That it's so interesting to think of like, well, computers are so ones and zeros. They're very discrete. You know exactly what's happening, but we can never count on anything to be true.
Yeah, right. There's either memory, it exists or it doesn't.
Right.
It's as simple as that. It's on or off.
So it's very interesting to be so juxtaposed, having the ones and zeros on my, my blueprints on my code in front of me, and knowing everything is exact and it's exactly what it's supposed to be, and it was predicted to be that way, and that's what I knew was going to happen. Versus, I don't even know, what did I do yesterday? I don't remember. Maybe that was 2 weeks ago. Maybe it didn't happen. Whatever. Where am I? Who am I?
The
I don't
only way
know.
a computer's memory is going to change is if you told it to change.
Sure.
Maybe there's a bug in your code that caused it to change, but even then, you told it to change, even if you didn't anticipate the bug.
Yes.
Or maybe it gets hit with an X-ray or something and causes a single bit to flip, but it's nowhere near as extreme as just fabricating a memory. Like imagine if your computer just, you woke up one day, turned on your computer, and suddenly there's a massive file in RAM that your computer just randomly has.
I mean, Windows kind of sometimes.
I'm thinking back to my motherboard that had a driver
memories.
Memory leak. I did have that exact problem.
But that's the point. Like it's a valid, chunk of RAM. It's like a photograph or something that you never put in RAM and nothing made. Like that'd be
memory's
wild.
not the right word for it because it's too predictable and too exact.
Exactly.
Although
something else.
It's really interesting though because fundamentally at its base with computers, they're ones and zeros, right? And like you said, whenever something's happened, something caused that thing to happen most of the time, right? Based on what we've been able to achieve as of right now.
Right.
But with AI, it's taking those fundamental building blocks, turning them into neural networks, into these systems that you kind of can't necessarily predict exactly how a thing trains or learns. You can't predict
exactly how it's training or learning, but you know that it works, same principle.
You know the output and input, but you don't know what happens in that black box. That's what always scared me about that kind of
some
stuff.
algorithm which converts converts a 1 into a 0 in a certain case, depending on some number of inputs, or a 0 into a 1 based on some other number of inputs.
It's kind of this case where there's like order and chaos, and then order again, So it's like we have the chaos of our real world, and it feels like very wishy-washy. Like, what is our memories? That's the chaos of it. And then there's the order of like a computer, then it like does everything the same way, and like between day 1 and day 5, like the bits are exactly identical and the same. And then there's AI on top of it, where it's taken that and become more fuzzy again.
It's interesting that you make that order and chaos kind of point there, just that how unusual it is and how even rare randomness is in computing, that we have to seed the entropy pool. I learned about the entropy pool finally when I had to do some work on a...
What is the entropy pool?
So here's a fun little story, a little aside about this, I guess. I ran into a problem on an embedded Linux device, and I'll leave it at that I was working on at work. And one of the problems we had was that when we enabled SSH, so you have now SSL, which is your secure sockets layer. Of course, that's going to be your encryption. So when you talk, you chit chat on the network, you want to make sure that somebody overhearing it wouldn't know what it is. So you use a cipher. You basically encrypting your traffic. And I'll leave it at that. But to have that randomness generated in some place in the operating system then allows you to always have a new way of encrypting your information. So of course, if you use the same code every time, somebody else might be able to break that code. So what you want to do is use randomness so that your code is always a secret and only the person you're chattering with on the network knows what it is. So in Linux specifically, of course, there's something called the entropy pool. And the way you seed that or feed it randomness is, of course, through the user. And sometimes there are some other ways to seed the entropy pool, which I learned. Some of the ways that I found we could do without user interaction was like CPU clock jitter. So of course your CPU is clicking, clacking maybe a million or a billion times a second, but the frequency is not perfect. perhaps. Right. So you can
Wiggles
use the
forth
jitter, the difference in what was expected to seed the entropy pool. Maybe it was a little early and you give it a 1, and it was a little late and you give it a 0. I mean, of course, there's so many sensors inside the processor. Maybe there's the temperature sensor on your CPU. If your CPU runs a little hot, okay, now we've got new data that wasn't there before and wasn't predictable.
Right, and you can combine all that together to get more entropy, right?
So you have this massive network of all these sensors and ways of gathering randomness, including the user. So, of course, the touch screen was our best way of seeding our entropy pool. And what we found was that if you didn't touch the tablet, it would take 1.5 minutes to boot, which is really bad. I mean, we were looking for like seconds, or at least on the order of like 10 or 20 seconds. But I was very suspicious that this was the problem. So I rubbed my finger all over the screen for 3 seconds, seeded the entropy pool, booted up right away. So I was like, how is it that I can make this boot faster just by swiping my hand all over the screen? But that's exactly it. Is computers are so hard at being, or they're so bad at being random that getting that randomness is something you really have to try to gather. So it's very interesting to just think about now having this AI, integration into our everyday computing. Now we kind of have sort of a non-predictable part of computing that's so hard for us to visualize as being these chaotic, random generating beings. We're trying to think, how is this machine more like me, more like a human that's, thinking and breathing and random in all of those interactions. It's kind of scary. Some people, see themselves in computers and start to worry and think, this isn't natural. This isn't what I'm used to, So it's just an interesting thought experiment to compare that order and chaos of like, well, now we can't be too sure what's under the hood, even when we're looking right at it.
And it only gets worse from here. Software 2.0,
it's not getting any better.
It's not getting any better.
Sure, yeah.
It's going to be used in more and more places to do more and more different things, like driving cars.
Yeah, that's another one, yeah. We want everything to be predictable, and humans are really bad at predictable behaviors. So
I have an interesting aside as well.
Sure.
Which is, you mentioned seeing, like, humans seeing themselves in machines, And I will never forget, like, I was in robotics in high school.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember making this robot from scratch, using nothing but, in a group of friends and myself, like, tinkering with this and knowing the stuff. And we ended up building something that ended up being like this physical robot that did stuff.
It's alive,
right? And it was crazy for me to see, like, especially when I made it autonomous and I programmed it with autonomous programs.
Yeah.
Seeing other people, like, for example, like other people in my family, when they would see it, they gave it a personality, and they were like, this thing, like, it's real, it's like a human, like it behaves in this way, because like with how I programmed it, it happened to do certain things kind of weird just because I'm junky at programming, in high school.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
And so it was wild to me. It's like, you think this person's a human, but it's something like I physically made.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
I made this human, like, physically, like, that blew my mind.
Is it greater than the sum of its parts? That's the ultimate question, I suppose. Yeah.
Not really. It's just running basic C.
Well, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of funny to even think about having a personality, because the second
in fact,
you mentioned
I don't even think it's C. It's like some weird interpolated layer of C, because I know what
it's robot C.
Yeah, it's robot C.
Yeah.
It's like some weird interpolated sort of C where you're not actually writing C code. They've got a bunch of weird functions already pre-made for you.
Which is really convenient for getting
it is
to
really
learn.
convenient for like high schoolers and middle schoolers to jump on that bandwagon.
But yeah, I bet now a lot of people are now having that question where they kind of build something like that moves or acts on its own accord, or at least it seems to.
Is my phone another person?
And they think, well, yeah, you might think that, like, how it's so hard online. I would say maybe impossible to tell if you're chatting with a real person or a bot. I mean, at this point in time,
that one, though. I mean, right?
It's
like,
hard to tell.
Look at some of the personal assistants and stuff, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
You like ask your personal assistant to do a thing, but it's not a natural conversation.
Yeah.
Like, it always has to be like a dedicated known command already. You're not going to like have a normal conversation with it. Please do this.
Right.
If you wouldn't mind, also do this. Doesn't make sense to that.
Yes.
It needs to be do this.
Yeah, syntactically, there's a certain way you have to talk to computers for them to understand you.
Right.
Now. But that's the question.
Certainly
of like,
in the future, that's
where
going
does
to
it go?
change, and that's terrifying.
Alexa actually has a. I'm so sorry for people at home with their devices.
Well, only if they use speakers. Yeah.
But that device, the Amazon device, I'll call it.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
The Amazon device.
Amazon wiretap.
Yes, the voice assistant / wiretap, whichever you prefer.
Yep. Oh gosh, rattled me.
Sorry, we've gone down the channel.
Sorry. The Amazon device has a way that normally it does operate exactly how you said. You give it preset commands and it'll do those commands. But there is a thing that you can say where you say, Amazon device, let's talk or let's chat. And it'll open up one of those, a couple of, actually, let me start again with this other preface is that Amazon as a company hosts this tournament where they wanted to make chatbots. And whenever you say Amazon device, let's talk, I think that's the way, right? It might be something slightly similar.
Sure.
What they'll do is they'll instantiate one of those different chatbots that they have like in a rolling pool.
Right.
And then you'll talk with it. And the one who's supposed to be the most lifelike, after you're done talking with it, you rate it. And then over time,
they're trying to improve them over time. I'm sure.
Exactly.
That's terrifying.
I mean, it's kind of terrifying, I guess.
Oh my
but
gosh.
But the whole idea then is like you have a friend to talk to if you want, or just someone. To
I'm gonna talk with my AI friend that reports everything I say to the NSA. Man,
you know what? If it
I mean, so does your real friend. So
everyone around you is a bot.
Well, it's so impossible to tell online. Yeah, that's really scary. I mean, because
no, even in person.
What does Amazon want it for? They just want it so that they can say, "Hi, my name is Bill, and I'm here to help you about the problem you had with your order." And maybe it's not even a real person because it saves them however $12 an hour or whatever.
Something
they're
like
paying
that.
somebody to do
well,
that.
10 cents a day if you're in India or something. Right?
You hate to see it.
Didn't Apple prove that? I don't know.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I was like, well, what else could they do with that? Because I mean, we know that Amazon is a big company that is more interested in you as a data mining resource.
You as a source of data.
Than they are as, maybe just somebody who buys products. Because how much money does Amazon make just selling you products online or even selling businesses products?
They still make plenty of information or plenty of money selling you products online.
And I know they
because
do,
they're tracking what products you buy.
Yeah, everything you click
then, of course,
is tracked.
Yeah, right. So it spirals back to you are the product.
Not only do they know, I mean, they basically know exactly what you're looking at this point. So now it's like a question of, well, what
that's
are
an
they
interesting
use?
thought. I wonder how accurately they could predict anytime you log into Amazon what your next search is going to be.
Oh, I'm sure they do. They serve you the next search on the top of the page. I mean, what do you think?
But I wonder how accurately they could predict. But there's any random user.
There's that story though of like this parent walking into, I think it was like a Target or something like that, and they're like, "What on earth are you guys doing? I need to speak to your manager. My daughter is getting recommendations for baby products, and are you telling her that she should be irresponsible and conceive a child? She's 15. How dare you send my child this?" And then the next week he strolls in and he goes, "I'm so sorry. I have to apologize. There's something that I did not realize was happening. And I sincerely apologize."
Yeah.
Whereas that is a terrifying thought. And Target, I don't know. I mean, it's anecdotally whether or not it's true. And I'm sure there is a seed of truth to it already. And I'm sure that's happened before.
Target knew the daughter was pregnant before the dad did.
Terrifying. But I mean, you'd think just how many reference links and how many clicks were tracked on somebody's activity to be able to determine that about them. I mean, have you guys ever looked at what Google knows about you? I did this once.
Way too much. I try. My next phone is going to run either Ubuntu Touch or a non-Google version of Lineage OS.
So you're already there. You're like, I'm not doing this anymore.
I already know how much they track. Every single thing. If you use Google Text-to-Speech to text your friends, for however long you've used it, all of it is logged. You can look at your account and see messages that you sent 12 years ago. Immediately. Just right there.
You already know.
I already know my next phone is not going to run Google. And it's not going to be an Apple phone either. It's literally going to probably be Ubuntu Touch.
The problem is you give up a lot of functionality by doing that.
What functionality do I use? I gain privacy because I use my phone for Reddit and sending messages.
And that's interesting because
for me, perfect use case.
That's the most important.
I don't have to do privacy. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Privacy is very important to me, which is why I don't publish information about myself online. Okay,
so I feel like, to me, I have a pretty good balance of the privacy and the convenience because I definitely know, there are things I don't want tracked. There are things that I don't want cookies enabled for. And I usually will choose to reject them if I'm given the option. But I do like having the ability to say, and this is, a stupid example, but let's say, here's a picture from 2016. I don't know where this was taken. I can go back into my GPS history and look exactly that date, that time, where I was. Yeah. And whereas it's private to me, that doesn't mean that it's completely secure. And that is an interesting part of that social contract that I'm opening up. I am allowing Google to save that for me. and use it however they will. I know they're usually pretty good about saying we're not going to use this, they're
good about saying it,
such and such about it.
Using it.
I'm one that I prefer to read the privacy policy because they typically try to at least
I've
days
started
give you
reading privacy
version.
policies in terms of services
because
well,
I want to know, like for Samsung Health, I just got a Samsung phone and they said, hey, here's some stuff. Do you want to agree to like have this and this and this, integrated in? And I read the privacy policies, and one of the check boxes was like, do you want to send non-anonymous health data? And they said they'll use information about you. And I was like, hell no, I don't. I don't want to send that to you. Like, I feel like anonymous data, that's fine. If you want to know how much this, 22 to 28-year-old person who lives in like this region in the United States and has all the other demographics, you want to know how many steps I take a day, that's fine. Maybe somebody can use that information to make a better model for health overall in the US. Maybe not. Whatever. They're probably just going to make a couple bucks off of it and move on to the next project. But I think like there's a certain amount I'm willing to give. But yeah, you have to ask that question. Where do you stop? Where do you say no? Where do you draw the line?
I see one other issue with that though. You're giving them that data. They're selling the data and making the money.
Yeah.
You're not seeing a dime of that.
Well,
right?
I know that. I guess
you're not seeing a dime
me,
of the physical money, but you're gaining the service still.
Right, and that's the thing is they like say, well, when
service could be substituted for something else that doesn't track.
Sure, of course,
right?
and that's I guess where it ultimately boils down to, because that was my primary factor was they said, well, if you don't provide this certain amount of information every time I check a box, then some features won't be available to you. And I thought, let me pick and choose. And that's ultimately where I was. I think I checked everything but a couple boxes here and there, and I'm happy with what I chose. But I know that what I'm doing is, I'm accepting a social contract that I may be more exposed now to a certain gap in privacy, whereas other people, especially like yourself, you may find that you are more comfortable in what you've chosen. So
yeah, right.
I'm curious to think what you think.
It's really
Kyle here, yeah.
It's really funny. So I'm going to spoil it and say we have an extreme shown in the middle. I am the other extreme. Again.
Okay. You share it all.
I am,
Closer
totally.
to
Share it all.
Chandler, then.
Right. And what's your credit card number?
I,
All right.
Yeah, man. Can you tell me your social? I
Right,
need,
right.
First three
Since you're
digits?
sharing it all.
Yeah. Last four digits of your social, please.
Sure.
because I view it as like these superpowers that I'm gathering.
Sure.
And
Yes.
it is hypothetically possible for myself to be damaged by this in the future. For example, I might have to pay more for health insurance in the future because some data of mine gets leaked, for example. Or maybe hypothetically, I was going to say maybe hypothetically it's possible for someone to get my social security number and or like credit card information easier, but I disagree. I am at same roughly that way at least as an average
I think that
person.
there's also nuance here, though, right? You can be very open, but you can still have good security. You can still have good infosec. If you use a password manager and
Which I do.
passwords, exactly.
Yes.
You can share a whole bunch of information, but as long as you keep that locked down, well, you're not going to leak your credit card numbers, or you're not going to get hacked in the way that, some people think of that. On the other side of the spectrum, if you're the most private person in the world, there's some level of privacy through obscurity, obviously.
Right.
But if your password is 1
Using
for your
Arch
bank
Linux.
account,
Not only that,
it's
but
pretty easy to hack into your bank account.
Sure.
that, and you have hundreds of accounts, thousands of accounts now for different websites. How are you keeping
absolutely.
track of all of those yourself in your head? It's like physically
Exactly.
impossible as a human.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I guess the weird thing though is like going from one extreme to another extreme, which I am. Like I'm like use everything. I guess I got one other thing I want to say is that one of the reasons why I'm okay with giving away most of my data is I find it very unlikely that it will actually hurt me.
Sure.
I think I don't do anything illegal. I don't do anything that I think is really controversial, I guess.
Right.
Who knows? I might get canceled
See, the
tomorrow.
funny
or
thing is,
something,
I see
but-
that as detrimental to those of us who want to share or keep our data
And that is a
private,
really good point.
Right?
That's the biggest
Everyone
thing I
says,
ever saw.
oh, well, I have nothing to hide. The
Right.
instant you have something to hide, the government bashes down your door and shoots you in the head.
Okay, and whereas again, if we're talking in extremes, they paint pictures.
Extremes paint the best pictures.
But it's a great point. You got to
It's
understand.
a great point, right? I have nothing
You can't
to hide.
give up rights
Suddenly,
just because you think you don't need them.
right, exactly. You can't. You have to protect those rights
Sure.
for the other people who want to
Right.
have those rights.
And that's where it becomes the slippery slope. Where I don't
Yeah,
think
right.
there's any
And
problem with
obviously there's
oversharing
slippery
data.
slope
And I don't
argument,
think you would
right?
be oversharing. But you definitely have to know, at least there should always be that opportunity for somebody to say, absolutely not. I want to remain fully private, and have a company be able to respect that, as well as they respect somebody who says, I'm happy to participate in all your studies and give all the data away that you can make hundreds of dollars off a year. I don't care, And
But one thing is like people who are like keeping all of their data super duper private versus someone who's letting their data all flow is I feel like one additional pro, I guess, in the letting all the data flow category is that it's letting the world hypothetically get to a point quicker where it's okay that the government hypothetically, let's say in this, crazy situation, is understanding that everyone is human, and it allows for that communication to happen and for that to be fixed. Whereas in everyone being private, that's like saying, we know that there's problems, but let's fix the solution by just denying that there is a problem and just hiding the fact that it is a problem.
Sure.
So I want
Can you rephrase that? I don't fully.
I wonder if, and let me understand it. I just want to see if I'm getting this correctly. Sure. Are you saying that there's maybe an overall a better societal benefit to having people that want to share that kind of information that would not be achieved otherwise if people were all completely private about their information?
Yes, except that there's two other things I want to say on top of it, which is like, one, it's pushing our society in the ability to do that. However, it does run the risk where, there's the second thing I want to say, it runs the risk where if, let's say, the government decides, no, everyone has to be perfect humans, that you end up in this dichotomy where, by definition, you're not perfect. And because you're not perfect, you'll do something that's not perfect. And therefore, you will get shot in the face.
Right. You do you make one mistake, I don't know, something minor or whatever, and now suddenly your ability to live is impacted because how do I make this an extreme, I guess?
Me too. I mean,
all right, here's one. It's a little controversial, let's be real. This whole discussion is
controversial.
There's a person who uses a different pronoun or whatever than they look, maybe. They use they, them, we'll say, just to, avoid it. You accidentally use the wrong pronoun. And now suddenly your life is in danger because you used the wrong pronoun or whatever.
I hope that never
shared
happens.
all that data. Yeah, I hope that never happens. But you accidentally, whatever, call it a microaggression or just a simple mistake, perhaps.
Yes.
And suddenly massive issues for you because you made a mistake because you're human.
So you're thinking that now maybe having this lens so deeply focused on each individual in society, whether or not there's a person behind it, but rather an algorithm that's just constantly collecting data, you think that maybe that can amplify any mistake you make and definitely make your life harder in general.
Not going to say it's going to happen,
but that there's a possibility.
I'm willing to say that there's a possibility. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, it's like one way to combat it is to be like, let's just have it so that way anytime I did accidentally mess up, that I was private about it and therefore it won't get leaked and we'll just pretend it never happened. Versus another way, I feel like we can evolve to the point where it's like someone did say this and they can accept the fact that they did it wrong and it was an accident.
Sure.
And let's learn from it together. One way I feel like it's sweeping it under the rug, and the other way I feel like it's getting to the point where we can learn as a society. But I totally agree it's not there yet.
I think we're not in either part of that. And I would hope that we're moving towards the latter. Absolutely.
I think we're too judgy of a society too, right? Like America was originally intended as a place for everybody of all different walks of life to show up. But it almost feels like now if you are different, you get bullied.
Right.
Or,
it's always been like a lofty goal, but it's so hard in execution.
Even though the country was founded with the intent of everyone from every different walk of life will be able to come here and be accepted for who they are. But it doesn't happen.
Yeah. The road to hell is paved with good intentions,
Let's be real. It never did.
Yeah. Well, we know from our country's early history.
Right. We know from our country's history that simply never happened. Is it better now than it was?
Absolutely.
Sure, but it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah, continuous improvement is definitely something that's always important in any group of people.
But also the societal forces there change, right? What's accepted 3 years ago isn't accepted in the future, or 3 years in the future, right?
Yeah, it is so funny
it changes,
look back
right?
on how much
What's
we changed as a society.
now isn't accepted then.
Even in my lifetime.
Even in my lifetime.
5 years ago, you could never say something like this.
But years after I die, whatever I did that was accepted is going to be unacceptable.
So it's kind of cool that
will be then.
that right now we've gotten, or at least we're about to get, it feels like, to the point where we can accept the fact that back in the day, something wasn't up to our standards and that's what it was at that time, right? And because of that, like moving forward, it still feels like we're having logical progression because, like you said, in the future, we're doing stuff right now that we'll think is really bad, right? Just by the nature of how history has been happening so far. But it feels cool to me, I guess, that at least in addition to that, we accept the fact that we are in today's time and we're doing the best we can at today's time.
That's ultimately what it boils down to, right? That's all you can do.
Yeah,
You know that
do
you
the
know,
best you can, right?
you're always going to scrutinize your past self because you have no idea what the future holds. So you got to use that to just improve yourself, I suppose, and try to improve as a society. But that's something that, try to get 100 people in a room to all agree on one thing. It's so hard to know what the direction forward is.
I'm willing to say it's probably never going to happen.
Well, yeah, I mean,
unless everyone is exactly the same.
Right.
But that's
not
good.
realistic. Right.
But
yeah.
But let's say that's not good because then there's no
absolutely.
diversity.
Sure.
Right? You need the different opinions to have diversity and to have like full knowledge of the whole scope of the issue, right?
And then the
if you only
representation,
have
too, of all those
one
diverse
reference
opinions.
point, you don't know what else there is
Sure.
in the issue.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to realize that there's always an opposing viewpoint, and maybe there's some credit to everyone.
There's credit to both sides of the
Yeah.
story, and there's credit to, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 8 sides.
There
There's
is
credit
no
to
one
all
path
sides,
forward.
maybe.
So there's another thing I guess I wanted to bring up in this topic. So we have one person who, is super private, one person who's super public, one person who's in the middle but chooses. But there's a fourth person demographic here that's not really represented. And that's people, for example, like my dad or my grandmother who don't know a lot about technology.
Yeah. Well, they're on the oversharing side. They just don't know it.
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
But they don't really have a
Exactly, yeah.
choice,
Yeah.
really, is the
Yeah.
thing, because they
Yeah.
don't have that information.
I
Yeah,
think
I
that
do.
that's probably the most unfortunate thing, right?
Yeah, I pity
want
my
to be
mom when I
private.
look at the emails
I
she
have
gets.
the option to be private, but it means I have to give some things up, right?
Sure.
My internet browser, for example, doesn't save, like, it'll accept cookies and they instantly go in the trash.
Nice.
It doesn't save a whole bunch of stuff to be as private as possible. Blocks trackers, blocks whatever. It blocks inside the HTTP status or the HTTP, the web address or whatever of a website. If you click to another one, it actually embeds a little tracker up there. So when you click from one site to another, the new site knows where you came from.
Exactly. Right.
Blocking that as well, a whole bunch of things. But it breaks a lot of websites.
Exactly. Yep.
My bank doesn't let me sign in using their app on my main browser. It just denies me. It's like, yeah, you're definitely a hacker.
And there you go.
And
That's one of the things,
but
the
it
conveniences
also-
you lose out on, but you
It
accept
also
that.
drives me insane, though,
Yeah.
right? Because it literally is just saying, yeah, you're not allowed to have privacy because we think you're a hacker. And
Yeah.
so it drives me
know how bad
insane.
code is.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It drives me insane that I can't choose to have privacy and continue to live my life the way I do.
Yeah, it's more
Obviously,
challenging to live
it's-
that lifestyle.
Yeah,
I'd
it
say.
really is. Certainly.
And less rewarding, maybe in some sense, less rewarding in the
It is what it
benefits
is.
you get
I-
from those kinds of
I take the
trackers.
benefit of not having to have my
But
whole
yeah, that's
personal
ultimately
life
the
uploaded
choice
to
you
the
make,
internet.
and
I'd
that was always
rather-
yours to choose.
Yeah. I don't know.
But it's so hard in order to even gain that information, which in the case like my grandmother, she doesn't seem to be interested in learning. But
Sure.
but I mean that's fair. It's
There's
not
an
her
age where
time,
you stop caring.
Yeah,
I feel like
exactly.
I derailed this. Let's go back to Kyle's thing though, right? Your grandmother doesn't have the knowledge, and so the default is yes, I want to give you all this information, and not knowing to click no or uncheck the box or whatever, they'll just continue or use the biggest button.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard. My grandma
no,
doesn't
I
even
don't wanna
read
do
it.
this
Giving you
is always a
information.
tiny little button.
Right.
It's never a big one.
My grandma doesn't even read it. She's like,
Sure.
this thing's in my way.
you
Get
click
it
it,
out of
you
my
make it
way.
work.
Yeah,
Okay.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
I mean, I've done some of that before as well, but then
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah, all of us
subconsciously
have.
realize and then go back and uncheck the box or uninstall the software and reinstall it to uncheck that box.
It all started with a
But-
string of emails nobody asked for, and then we realized, oh, maybe I did agree to something I shouldn't have. So-
Right, exactly, yeah.
Some learn early and some never learn. I see 1,400 new emails in your inbox. Maybe you didn't learn yet.
That
But, yeah.
sounds suspiciously like my inbox.
Yeah, so
Here's a small fun fact. I believe it is required by law that if you have like a subscription feed to something, like which is anything online that you click, send my email to them or whatever, and then you get a bunch of emails for them. In their email, it's required that they have an unsubscribe link.
How many companies do you think violate that though?
Very few, I'd say. Actually.
I've had
more than
pretty
you
good
think.
luck
Just because,
unsubscribing from things, at least in my experience.
yeah, me too. Actually,
See, this is also something that infuriates me. My browsers don't send that tracking information.
yeah.
I can click unsubscribe and nothing happens because they have no clue who unsubscribed,
request,
and
yeah.
it drives me insane.
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's sort of funny. It is sort of funny when it happens. I'm like, oh god
Jeez.
damn it, not
Yeah,
again.
one of the inconveniences
But, yeah.
of living the private lifestyle online. It's definitely not what the internet was designed for. So I mean, yeah, you definitely
No.
feel like you're kind of against the grain when you're just trying.
Oh, I
to
know I'm
do
against the
something,
grain.
you know.
I mean, well, I don't know. 3 people agree with me, and everyone else is just like, la di da di da. I have all my information.
That's
sure.
me. Let's go.
Yeah, right.
yeah,
That's where I don't know if you guys have heard of Web 3.0. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I don't know what it is.
Like, is this whatever Chrome is using for their new extensions or whatever, so that they can block like ad block and make sure that none of that works? I don't know though. I actually don't.
About that.
I'm not familiar with that particular aspect, but what Web3 hypothetically is, and this is an abridged version, of course, and or like could be totally wrong. So feel free to Google it. And,
we'll accept it.
etc. But to my knowledge, Web3 is a set of new style technologies, normally leveraging the blockchain and or NFTs and or a set of other structures where
lots of buzzwords.
Yep.
Yeah, way too much buzzwords.
Instead of going to like a corporation for your online activities, which is what we do today, in order to go online, you go to Facebook or to Reddit or to YouTube or to one of these big conglomerates, and you go and you are on their website. It's a way to structure the internet to where it is more private, to where you have more peer-to-peer communication directly.
Okay.
So closer to like a mesh network or something.
Yeah,
maybe.
Exactly.
Very unusual, at least in the current infrastructure of the internet.
Exactly.
Right.
And so hypothetically, where people are saying, Web 1.0 was just HTML and you could read online on your device. Web 2.0 was like what we have today, which is like these building of these services, and you can use these services and crazy cool stuff happens.
Trackers.
Yep, but that comes at the cost of this cost and privacy and tracking and stuff. So Web 3.0 is supposed to be like the next generation of these things, but it's really hard because if you're talking about the masses, like all of us happen to be really interested in technology, so we know some of the background that you need to know in order to even like think about the average person. Like, do you want to accept our cookies? Like, I like cookies, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, right.
Is it cinnamon cookies?
What a cookie
exactly. Who
is
cares?
it,
Right. They just hit
is it chocolate
accept.
chip?
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
It sounds fun. They're friendly.
Yeah.
Sounds fun. They're friendly. Just
Way
a
better
little
than
sticky
robots
note
or
right on your
spiders or
browser.
crawlers.
Oh wait, what do you mean it identifies me personally?
Yeah, and a lot of websites, if you don't accept the cookies, they just won't let you into the website. So they're like, oh, oops, I did something wrong. Let me go and hit the accept button.
Sorry, you can't use this website.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So
it's interesting. They never phrase it as like tracking cookies. It's always going to be a third-party cookie or an analytics cookie. They're good stuff. You
automatically block those, please.
Right. Yeah.
Oh wait, I need this cookie. Cool. I'll accept this cookie. Bin.
I have noticed though, and this sort of bothers me. I wonder if you feel the same, that you always have the big green accept all cookies.
Oh yeah.
And then there's no longer, or at least not always, the reject all third-party cookies. It's the
click
cookie
customize.
settings. Let me go into my cookie settings, because I guarantee there's nobody in there that doesn't know what a cookie is going in to customize how they're being tracked online. So they are. I have some thoughts about how the marketing world ties into there, and I think it's a little bit like they're being dishonest, maybe just by omission. So it's questionable, when you think
the
about
other thing
things
to
like
think
ethics.
about, though, maybe if we jump back to some of the stuff that Rob says, it's also terrifying to know what's going to get like legislated and regulated on in the internet era.
How many decades behind is the
legislation?
legislation?
We all know
already.
The legislation lags behind by at least 1, if not 2 decades.
All these guys in Congress are writing laws about the internet, and they don't know what the hell they don't know how to check their email. They
like blah blah blah. This here is not lawful, even though it should be or whatever, because some big lobbying company wants it to be.
Don't
illegal.
get me started on lobbying.
Oh boy. Yeah. Maybe we should cut that there and move on.
Change topics, but long story short, it's a problem that probably we should look at as a society.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be looked at some point.
I hope it gets solved sooner rather than later, but I'm not optimistic. I'm realistic.
I'll throw in one last thing, is that we're the generation that knows everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Next generation, like ahead of us, has grown up on smartphones.
Oh, yeah.
Don't know how to use the internet. Don't know how to use, they know how to go to TikTok and look at their haha funny video. But they don't,
yeah, exactly.
Right? They don't know what all the other stuff is. And the generation before us doesn't know like all the terms and hasn't learned because they never needed to, right?
That's actually interesting you brought that up. This makes me think maybe this would be a good topic of discussion. I'm curious, and maybe this is a little bit of a wishy-washy question anyway, but specifically, I wonder now that, of course, we are the generation, at least they consider us Gen Z age, where we grew up with the internet. That's kind of the rough definition. And I did only because my dad worked for an engineering firm. So in the 90s, he worked with computers. There were a lot of people that still didn't work with computers at that point, which it sounds pretty strange at this point. But we had a home computer with Windows 95 that we upgraded to Windows 98. That then we had Windows XP, and then I feel like we always got a new stage of hardware at that point in the year where suddenly everything has doubled or tripled in capacity. But I had dial-up internet since I can remember, so I always had internet access. But of course, my sister was kind of at that line where she grew up in the 90s and didn't really use the internet up until, the late 90s, early 2000s. And now, of course, when we think that this is just some prevalent thing, at least in our part of the world, of course, the privileged part of the world, where we have internet access and we have all this access to technology, it's so interesting to just think about how sketchy of a landscape it is to raise children, where there's always going to be access to God knows what on the internet. And of course, I never worried about, my parents at least didn't worry about what I was doing online, because I was like, haha, paint is fun. Look at the colors. And I was like, let me look up Tonka Raceway online. Like, I wasn't doing anything, particularly unsafe, only because maybe I didn't know the full capacity.
You didn't know. You click on
internet.
Happy Tree Friends and you're like, ha ha, colors.
But YouTube didn't exist when I was playing around, so I didn't have to worry about scary Russian videos that are posed to be children videos, but then they have like these horrifying scenes that are interspersed between them. So, I mean, I feel like now there's still like a wishy-washy protection of children on the internet that, again, legislation just lags so far behind.
Yeah, some of it has been thrown on YouTube. They're trying to do it, right?
My
They're
question
trying.
is, how much do we have to protect the children, though, right? It's so much, think of the children, but they're more mature than you think.
What I was,
depends on the
getting
age.
at.
It depends.
What I wanted to get at is,
if they're
are you
5 years
planning on
old,
having
are they
children?
mature?
If they're 5 years old, they probably shouldn't be looking at, whatever.
Should they not be? The problem is, like, if you have a 5-year-old that does grow up with the internet and a 5-year-old that doesn't grow up with the internet, the 5-year-old that's not growing up with the internet is at a huge disadvantage.
Right.
Absolutely.
But the child that is growing up with the internet might, just based on random chance, based on what they happen to click on, might also be scarred for life. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Might also be scarred for life. Plus, there's also the whole addiction thing, where many of the websites on the internet are designed to get you addicted.
Well, I mean, you see how even in like a restaurant these days, I don't hear a lot of screaming children anymore, because all I see is like tapping with the pacifier.
I never thought about that. That's crazy. You're right.
It's so weird to think that, I mean, just how inseparable technology is from the kids. I would wonder, and again, I don't know what your like lifestyle plans are. Maybe you don't have them yet, but are you guys planning on having children? And if you are, what would be your plan? I mean, how would you regulate technology as not only like this infinite resource, but also as this like potential danger and the risks associated with like exposing your child online?
Well, I don't have to think about this because I don't want children.
See, and that's great. So you already kind of know your standpoint, and that's great. And I feel like having that privacy standpoint that you have,
it's just such a massive financial investment.
Right. Well,
and it's another person that I have to
exactly.
Although
I can barely take care of myself.
And that's having kids is terrible for the environment.
Like,
but
I
it's a
don't
part
want
of the
to,
human
man.
experience, at least for most people. And
Sure,
we're
I
seeing
can
how
find
that pans
happiness
out.
without children, though.
And that's what's
I
most
think
important
there's
for
also
you.
a societal aspect of that, though, where as a species we're expected to be happy and
absolutely.
have children.
Right. Yes, that's true.
But I've accepted that I don't have to have children to be happy.
Well, and that's great. So you answered my question. What I'm curious, though, is what your opinion is. And again, if you don't have one now, maybe you can just let me know what you're thinking.
Yeah. So I think hypothetically, yes, I guess I eventually do want children, I think. At this point, but it could always change, of course.
Right, exactly. And who knows? Who knows what's going to happen a year from now? We've already been over this.
Yep, exactly. But for your question, which is like, how should I regulate them? It's so hard because I'm of the era of, I want to give my kid the best chance that they can have.
Sure.
And therefore, they need to be able to use the internet.
Right.
The problem is, like, how do I maximize the chances that they don't get scarred for life?
Exactly.
So do I let them get scarred and then be able to retroactively, like, help them and give them resources to where they can talk about it and understand what's going on?
Right.
Or do I make it so that way I'm constantly monitoring what they do, but then you're being too overbearing?
Sure.
Right, and then there's the whole rebel stuff. Of,
Right.
Yeah.
Why is he doing this?
Exactly.
I'm going to go against that. And
Isn't there also like some term where it's like, if you have like there's two types of children who like go out of their house like late at night and their parents let them go out at night, and then there's the overbearing parent that doesn't let their child go out at night.
Right.
But they just
the
do,
child
but more
sneaks out their
sneakily.
window,
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah,
Like the child's
They're
gonna do whatever.
what they want
Right,
to do.
exactly.
It just depends if you
Yes.
let them do it, or if you don't let them do it, in which case they're
Right.
going to find a more dangerous way to do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right?
And you want to try to maximize, hypothetically, that communication between
Right, exactly.
parent and child.
Which
And
becomes
I think-
increasingly difficult as they grow older.
I
And that's
think
the
you're-
one thing that I wonder about,
I think your best bet is to teach them how to use the internet safely.
Sure.
Right? You have to give them the ability to think for themselves. You have to give them common sense and the ability to analyze and see this is a dangerous website. It's deceptive and it wants to install malware or show you a horrifying.
Which we still have to do training every quarter at work
whatever.
for, and we still have problems with
You guys
people
have to
doing
do
that.
training for it.
It's like, how do I identify a phishing link? Hover over it, and that's black magic for some people.
I'm really glad that I don't have to do that training. Although I get the phishing links occasionally because they try to
Best
fish.
Buy gift card.
You know,
sketchy link.
right, exactly. Your Amazon order.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, because I use my work email to buy
exactly.
Amazon stuff.
But
okay,
I know it works. I know they catch the people
Absolutely.
who
100%.
because
I used
they
to
have a
work
tracking
IT.
ID on them.
Yeah, I used to work IT. We
So-
caught a handful of people, with them.
So, I mean, it's
Companies
crazy to
use
just
them.
think. I mean, as a parent, you have to think, well, I'm responsible at least for, protecting my child from potentially malicious websites and maybe even potentially malicious people online. But then you think, well, what do you do? How do you ease somebody into the internet, I think, is an interesting question. Because I know the latest legislation I'm aware of, and on this specific topic, is from 1997 with the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA,
God.
which basically said if you're under 13, you may not make an account on the internet. Or more realistically, if you're under 13, you may not have a company gather personal information about you, personally identifiable information, without a parent's consent. And that's why, again, kids can make Facebook accounts, Instagram accounts with parents' permission. And it's still why Disney Channel would say, get your parents' permission to play this Flash game.
And the funny thing is,
R.I.P.
your parents'
Flash.
permission
R.I.P.
is just a checkbox that the
Right,
kid
exactly.
checks
So
either way.
easy to subvert anyway. But, the question is like, well, is your 13th birthday gift for your child a smartphone? Or do you say maybe, okay, let's wait until we're a little bit older and a little bit more aware of the risks and dangers? Because I know I was an idiot at 13. Like I
absolutely.
definitely
I'm still
got a
an idiot
virus
now.
before. Right. I'm always learning. And there's always new dangers that are generated out on the internet. And that's
One advantage that we have, though, is we do have the internet,
Right.
which means that we have the ability to Google when we're in the situation what millions of people have done with their children and see what has and hasn't worked for them.
That's right,
And be
yes.
able to apply it to our children, which is actually kind of a crazy superpower if you think about it.
Yep,
Like,
there you
what
go.
the heck?
Internet as a superpower.
You
It's
and
a
your
beneficial
superpowers.
resource.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
true,
ultimately
true.
what it is. I mean, of course, there's I'll stand by it. It's a social contract. Every time you choose to maybe sell Google your search, you
Or just
still
give
get
it
that
away.
knowledge out of it that you couldn't maybe get somewhere else, especially when I think of like a rural town. When I think of where my dad was from, out in the boonies, his libraries were still handing
gotta
out
go
books
find an
that aren't
encyclopedia,
allowed
yeah.
anymore. I'm just thinking like
Banned books. Oh man. Banned.
Yeah,
doc-
right.
Oh god.
That's a different rabbit hole to go down.
That's a
But yeah,
different one.
that's what it comes down to is like when you have at least the most recency and the most like current information available, whether or not you can validate it. You always have a resource at your disposal for learning how to do anything and learning how to maybe improve yourself. But yeah, ultimately you have to be the judge of what you think works for you. So
Yeah. I don't know. I am still mind blown the fact that we do have the internet, just because
Isn't it wild?
I would not be where I am right now. Like as good. I've thought like I want to ask you guys, I guess, think about where you are right now and where you think you would be if you didn't have the internet, and try to compare and contrast them.
oh yeah,
Like,
it's
I
wild
cannot
to me.
answer that question because the internet has been ingrained in me since I was like 12 years old.
I feel the same way,
physically
and I think
cannot
that's
answer that
kind
question.
of that's what defines, at least to me, what being a Gen
Z
Z
is,
person
yeah.
is. I mean,
Like if
when you
I
grow
never
up
had
with it, you
access
just
to
think
the
it's a
internet, for all
resource.
I know, I wouldn't be a privacy-oriented person. I'd just be some, I don't know, we'll call it an idiot on TikTok, like, hey, funny video.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think it'd
There
be a
is
similar
also
question to
one
ask your
behavior-
parents, like what would it be like to grow up without electricity? I mean, at this point, you just think something that's a utility that's so widely available in your part of the world anyway, has completely changed not only your life but like society in general. Hopefully for the better. I mean, of course, some people might argue about that, but we're not talking about the anarchy.
I'll argue against it already.
Basically, when you have such a staple in your life that makes daily life possible, makes your work possible, makes your enjoyment of activities possible, it makes waking up early in the morning before the sun is up and, staying up late and still doing something possible. I mean, you'd think without having a resource like that, how different your life would be. It's impossible for me to even say. I mean, I don't even know
I
if
feel
I'd
like-
live here if I didn't have the internet.
I feel like if I were to take this argument to its extreme, I guess it's more of a question of, do you think it's better to live with knowledge and deal with it, or better to be ignorant and bliss?
Rather live with
Interesting.
the
Ignorance is
knowledge.
bliss.
I would much rather live with the knowledge.
Yeah, I would stand by it. I think that just, especially again, of course, my work relies on having a computer. So I need the internet to do my work. But yes, could I have worked on a farm? Yeah, I came from a family of farmers, maybe a few generations back. Could I have done that and sustained a life? Of course. But just if I had been able to compare between the two, I think I would, of course, from my biased perspective, always choose this one, just because the wealth of knowledge, at least available to me from the internet, and even, again, the societal connections. I have made more friends on the internet in the past 5 years, I think, than I've made in person, which is crazy
Some would
for me
argue
to think.
that's a bad thing, and others would argue that's a good thing.
Right, exactly. And of course, that's one thing that was really weird for my parents to learn at first. My brother moved way far away from home, some 400 miles away, and didn't know anyone. He found a job, he found an apartment, and just moved away to another state. And some of his first friends he met online just playing League of Legends. RIP to the League of Legends players. Dota fans, do your thing. I don't care. Anyway, but that was what was so weird to me, was that he was then meeting up with these people he just played games with, and he still is friends with a lot of them today that he's met online.
Yep.
And hangs out with all the time. And my parents were like, you're telling me you just like met these strangers on the internet? But that's how they view it. I mean, they're like, they're strangers. You're still talking to these strangers, but it's like, no, this is somebody that I was
my
able
friends
to talk
now.
to.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
They were strangers.
had
for
enough of a connection, right?
a few minutes, and now they're my friends.
Every friend you have was a stranger at one point. I mean, that's just
Absolutely.
a weird,
Yeah,
but that's the way the world is, I guess.
Some people think it's even more dangerous to meet, new people in public now, right? Because
Yeah, exactly.
there's an
You
inherent
think, like,
danger
you
that
don't know
can come
what's
from
going
that, especially
on.
if you're of the female gender.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's living your life on hard mode. And
Yeah.
we can reference
Well,
plenty of content that Dr.
something to be
K
said
has
for
done
that.
with
Yeah.
healthygamer.gg there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very interesting to think. But no, I think overall the internet has only been has been more beneficial than detrimental in my life. And I know, again, that some other people with outside perspectives might think
I certainly think
different,
there
but-
are many people who would disagree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
definitely.
I get it. Yeah, I'm sure my dad would still be like, maybe I'd rather just live in a log cabin out in the middle of the woods and never have the internet again. And
I'm
maybe
old
he's
enough.
right.
I feel like that sometimes
is-
already. Like
yeah.
I'm mentally like 60 years old. I swear.
Yeah, right.
It is
exactly.
surprising how many software engineers do that, and or
I
just
know.
engineers
yeah,
in general.
How
do
many
that.
I'm all
software
for it.
engineers are of the? I keep the only printer I own is from 2004. I keep a loaded gun next to it, ready to shoot it if it makes an unexpected noise.
There you go.
The S in IoT stands for security.
I like that. That's good.
I mean, it's true. Let's
I
be real.
know. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, no, it's
SSL is
so,
too hard on an embedded system.
security. What's that? We don't
Yeah,
need
exactly.
that.
It's easier to just
Yeah.
plain text.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It is easier.
Here's your SSN. Just
Exactly.
write in
Oh,
plain
God.
text, delivered straight to your browser.
You're a hacker for looking at that.
You're a hacker for pressing F12.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Check out the other podcast with Rob for that.
Yeah, here's a throwback. Where's the link to click?
I'm pretty, yeah, I know. We
Right.
literally opened the other episode with if you press F12, you're a felon. Confirmed.
Well, yeah. And
I know
that's-
it because
that's
I
the state
edited
of the
that.
world, right?
Spoilers.
Yeah, right. Spoilers. Yeah, spoilers for the first 6 seconds. Oh man,
How could you?
how
Right.
could I?
Long story short, though, I really appreciate the internet personally,
Yes.
but
I
does have its
appreciate
drawback.
it. I don't know. The world would be a very different place without it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so incredibly different that I think it's impossible to really say.
I think it's
without
possible
spending
just by
many,
looking
many
back a
hours
little bit.
investigating.
Yeah, right. I guess
I
it's
mean,
still recent
sure,
enough. You can kind
yeah.
of look back.
Like, yeah, I mean, we have thousands of years hypothetically of human,
Yeah.
Sure.
presence without something like the internet. Therefore, that's kind of how life was, and
Right.
compare that life to this life, and we're biased because
Yeah, imagine if the transistor was never invented. How many jobs would
Well,
not exist?
everyone else argues and just says, well, someone else would just have invented it, which may or may not be true. But yeah, it's interesting to think, like,
But
what
that
if?
circumvents the original question.
Right, exactly, yeah, it's
the
a
transistor
fallacy.
was never invented. What happened?
Sure.
Yeah, what if it was physically impossible for?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
if it
Exactly.
wasn't
That's
possible.
so different.
Well, yeah, it
Already.
is very interesting. Maybe we'd have a trinary system
Still-
instead that
still
runs
have
on
cars and
organic matter.
everything,
I don't know,
right?
maybe not.
You'd still have cars because
Sure.
you'd have engines, but working would all be done on pencil and paper.
I mean, yeah, maybe. I would
'cause
hope
even
we'd
like
find a way to speed
like
things
you'd
up
have a
one way or another.
typewriter maybe, or
I'm
some
thinking
other,
to those, like,
it'd be
Russian adding
mechanical,
machines that just
physical-
have all the
yeah.
gears.
Right, exactly. It'd be like physical mechanical things.
Right.
I guess it would be mechanical computing at that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Instead of being a little tiny electronic device, it would be a giant mechanical contraption.
Well, the problem
you
is,
could
though,
make
is, like-
and or inverter gates out of mechanical parts.
That's what I wonder, is if we'd find just another way to do logic.
Right, we'd just find another way to do the logic.
Looking from this perspective, from this timeline to that timeline, we can say that though.
Right.
But in that
'Cause, of course,
timeline,
we know what that is.
Yeah, we know because of the transistor,
fair.
we've been able to advance so quickly in so many
Right.
different aspects.
Yeah.
But if you had to physically machine each of those gears and they break and they do,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
and you have
have
to
gears
machine those
making
by
gears.
hand, by the way, because the CNC machine doesn't exist in
Yeah.
this timeline.
There you go.
It physically can't.
Yeah, unless it is someone is able to create a mechanical version of the CNC machine, you know.
Right. Oh god.
Yeah, because electricity still would have
that.
existed, but you'd have to find a totally new way to control that motor using mechanical systems.
You'd have this giant mechanical box next to whatever you want to do.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it's going to be way
box
bigger than the size of a transistor.
Yeah. I think it is always fun to do those kind of thought experiments, especially just in my personal experience. Rather. Yeah, my personal experiment.
This is my timeline. I created it.
I created it.
Yeah, in my experience, I have done quite a bit of genealogy just as much as possible. It's something my grandpa was super into, so he already did a lot of work for me. And it's really cool for me to see, like, this is basically the first generation in my family that I know of that, like, actually, like, spread out. All of my ancestors that came to the United States basically stayed in the same town for generations because just I'm thinking like in the late 1800s, early 1900s, how difficult it was to travel anywhere. The most they were able to travel, at least on one side of my family, was they would take a train from like the mountains in Pennsylvania where they were coal miners over up into like, you know, you'd go into Cleveland or Chicago and find a steel factory to work in. And then they'd work there. And then like once the steel factory shut down, you know, people would spread out. But yeah, not having that ability to spread out initially. I mean, just the fact that my brother could move states away just because he could look up an online listing and say, I can buy that apartment and get this job. That wouldn't have been possible without the internet, and it might not have even been realistically achievable if there was just a telephone number to call.
To just move somewhere and hope that you can afford it.
Yeah, it's such an inherent risk to it. You know?
Right, exactly.
The only thing you'd have is personal experience. Like, hey, John, is that a expensive place to live? Yes or no?
Is this a good apartment? Yeah, it's good.
All right, yeah.
You know, like I hope it is.
And people can lie so easily and everything.
So even as deceptive as the pictures are, you know, you usually think they're mostly true.
Crazy, like even talking to my parents, like I want to do something, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, my one friend Billy Bob does this. You talk to them, right?" And then you talk to them, and you realize that they barely know what they're talking about just because you have the internet to compare it to.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And that's what their source of truth was.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
that is so scary.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, that was a fantastic discussion, guys. Thank you so much for doing all that. I think this is probably where we call it this week. So,
well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You want to outro us?
How great to be in the flesh. This is great. I finally got to experience a podcast first.
Yeah, we just talked about the internet. What the heck? Why are we not in the internet?
Come on, let's do this in the next room over. I'll go down to California and do it.
Hold on. You can step a room over and we can jump on a Discord call real fast. We're in the
get
same
another
house,
camera aimed that way.
Right, exactly.
Anyways, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And hope to see you guys next time.
Absolutely.
Have a great one.
Enjoy your new year.
Happy New Year.
Hopefully it brings you peace, prosperity, and cookies.
A lot of good kinds.
Cookies.